Scott Dixon here at Media Day. Is this your first thing for Media Day?
No.
Because you just kind of started, though.
Just
right?
started.
You're on the
I'm
early
like
side?
in the first hour.
So you're still fresh?
I'm pretty fresh.
Okay.
Yeah.
You haven't been asked
But
the
it's
same...
been like the 24 hours of thinking about this whole episode going on that we have to do today, you know?
Well, you've been thinking about this for 24 hours?
Thinks about the Media Day, you know? Or maybe it's just me. Maybe that's my problem.
This is why you go IndyCar racing. You're just so jazzed about the IndyCar.
I get paid for this and race for free, man. That's how it goes.
You get paid. Do you get paid per word?
I don't know.
Because that'd be a cool way to earn a living.
Yeah, maybe start talking a little bit more too. But.
No, they're obviously just paying you too much because you don't talk that much.
Oh, yeah, I don't know about that.
That's not how it goes?
Yeah.
All right, well, we still have the fresh-faced Scott Dixon early in his Media Day commitment. Not your first Media Day. You've done this a few times. On Sunday, you will start your 408th IndyCar race.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's so
consecutive, right? I think it's more than that. Maybe I don't know.
No, I think that's
the total.
Yeah, you're
consecutive. That sounds better. Yeah.
But it is going to be the most of all time. You are now, as of Sunday, the most experienced IndyCar driver in history.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing either. I don't know. You know, I think
keep it positive.
Yeah. No, it's a great thing. You know, obviously longevity. Had a cool video message from Mario, who I'm surpassing, which is very cool, and which we're very lucky to have the likes of him and AJ as well, still coming to most of the races, which is really cool. And you couldn't have a bigger and better advocate for the sport. So, yeah, I don't know. Not really thinking about my 408 start apart from trying to win it.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
but I'm sure it's one of those things you'll look back on and have a little bit of fond memories over, especially getting to do it here.
Yeah, absolutely. The timing is quite crazy. Didn't really know about it, I think, until maybe St. Pete or somewhere around there where somebody had mentioned it. So, yeah, the timing is crazy, man.
Wait, someone mentioned it at St. Pete.
Yeah.
So before the year started, you had no idea that you were going to break this record this year?
No, I didn't even know the record was even close. I had no idea, man.
Well, that kind of makes sense because when you think about it, I mean, Mario raced until he was 53, 54?
Yeah.
One of those two?
Yeah, I got some time left.
I was going to say, I mean,
another 9 years or 8 years. So.
How much do you want to extend this record?
We'll go for that. Let's try that, No, who's got the record for that? It's got to be AJ maybe. What was he, 56
for the oldest?
or something?
Yeah, I don't know. That one I don't know.
I'll
have to look that one up. But I mean, Elio's going to try to break that one first.
That's true.
He's got a couple years on you.
50
he's
now,
50,
right? Yeah. Allegedly 50. I think he's more like 52 or 53.
I've seen a couple of different versions of his passport.
That story might change here pretty shortly, I imagine.
He's got a couple black market passports that he's been going around. Scott, a lot of the talk this year around the Speedway has been with the hybrid and kind of how it's changed the handling of the cars a little bit, made it a little trickier, I think, to some degree. You've got, almost as much experience as anyone around here. Elio's, again, got you by a few.
Yeah.
But are you finding that it is a kind of big step from last year and definitely trickier to drive?
It's definitely trickier. I think we've seen some big crashes, and I think part and parcel with that is that once it kind of does get away, it's it's a big pendulum, kind of like feeling back there. It's really hard to kind of recover from it. I think in any time when you're getting ready for qualifying, you definitely explore those limits, and we had some moments, but luckily they were kind of smaller. One, the workload is a lot higher. Luckily in qualifying, the strategy that we picked was kind of low on the workload, which was nice. But in the race, you're doing two deployment. You're doing it every time out of two. You're regenning every time into three, and then vice versa on the front straight. So it's pretty full on, but definitely has changed the car. I think in the recent years that we've had, the aero screen kind of changed it a little bit, but not as much. But this one has been a pretty big shift for sure.
You've driven, I don't know how many different types of chassis, iterations of IndyCar at the Speedway. Do you have one that's a favorite?
Probably not this one. It's just the car has evolved to being quite heavy.
Right.
The power is the same or less. They're not very fast cars. They're kind of more of a junior category car now. I think even a lot of the road courses and street courses were maybe a second or two faster than Indy Lights. When I first came in, we were probably 12 seconds a lap faster in the early days. So as far as 500 cars, I didn't come here until the first time in 2003. So that generation was quite fun too, because you had a mix of, Dallara, G-Force.
Right.
You were able to as a team, work on kind of small boxes, whether it was end fences on the front and rear wings to floors to wheel, flips and all those kinds of things. And it was quite fun to go through that process. Now it's pretty locked down, which is great as well, because the competition is just through the roof, and it's very hard to find those small details. So I don't know. Through the earlier era, I think was a little more fun and a little more difference, just because every time you got in the car, it was something kind of new.
Yeah.
But I really do hope, I don't know when the new car is going to come. They're talking 27, that might be 28. Hopefully I'm still racing at that point. But I think that the cars are definitely in need of being lighter and definitely a lot more power.
Yeah, and back in those days, you could set your car up and trim to a way where you really try to separate from the pack and pull those leads. You can't really do that now, can you?
No, you might have the scenario where you can maybe break away a little bit and then have some lap traffic that you can kind of peel through and create that separation, and maybe over a long green stint you'll see it. But yeah, the year I won, we were able to trim way out and get the break on the restart, and then just pull away, which nobody can probably in recent history can remember situations like that. So, maybe if they bring the new car in, it has like a bigger rear wing. Right now we kind of just have a bit of a trim tab.
Yeah.
That kind of does a little bit. And I asked, actually, I said, what happens if we take that thing off?
Yeah.
Can we qualify without it and, do a different configuration? But, the times have changed, but I think the racing is better than ever, man. Like at this place, it's crazy.
And the qualifying this year was a little bit more exciting, I think, than what we've seen.
Yeah.
Just in terms of the balance, getting the car in that sweet spot. But also, you actually sort of touched on it, keeping it simple in terms of the procedure inside the car.
Yeah.
There's so many things that the drivers can do now. So you're saying you guys took the opportunity to maybe throw some of those away and kind of keep it a little more simple from inside the cockpit?
Well, I don't know whether it was luck or not, but for us, that was actually the better strategy.
Right.
You're fighting over hundredths of a mile an hour, and it seemed like one side of the kind of the garage was really stuck on one strategy earlier in the week, and then everybody kind of shifted, I think, to similar stuff that we were doing. But yeah, I've forgotten to redo the weight jack.
Right.
And luckily I've done it in corners where it didn't make too much of a difference, but we've seen, even the likes of Carl Larson testing where he forgot to do it, went straight into the fence. So, it's once you get one of those things in the sequence out of whack, it's kind of hard to recover from. So,
right.
Yeah, as they say, try and keep it simple, man. And that was definitely the way that we tried. And even I think in my last qualifying attempt, I didn't even have to shift, which was kind of nice too. So, yeah.
Just go flat, turn left.
Focus on the stands and see who's waving and things like that,
Do you have in Ganassi two teammates in Pillow and Kevin Simpson. You got the technical partnership with MSR with Felix and Marcus. Do those guys kind of look to you at a race like this with all your experience and say, as much as the engineer will tell you, oh, well, if you do this during qualifying and move this and switch and flip this knob or whatever, you might find 1/100th of a mile an hour.
Yeah.
That gets drivers excited. But then you look over to the GOAT and he's like, not going to do that. I'm going to focus on driving the car.
Yeah, just turn left, man.
Do they kind of gravitate more towards you, or do they try to follow the engineer's path and go to the last nth degree?
No, I would still be fighting for that too. The weight jacker thing, I think over the 4 laps is it a 10th of a mile an hour or something crazy? I'm like, do we really need to bother with that?
Right.
Because if you forget it, then the car's destroyed.
Right.
So, but then you get into the thick of it, and you see it on the sim, and it's a gain, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to do that as well. So it's the whole situation of just being extremely competitive, and the whole group is that way. So, I think the team has done a real good job of the alliance that they have with MSR. Obviously, 2 ex-teammates that I had inside Ganassi, so it's been super easy. Alex has been off to a tremendous start this year. So no, it's a competitive environment that all of us push each other as much as any single person.
You've got a second row start for the race this year. You've done it all. You've run the gambit here at the Speedway. Are you at the point of your career and the level of experience that you've got where you kind of think there's not really much to plan? You're in a good spot. You're at the front-ish. That's kind of where you want to get by lap 150 anyway.
Yeah.
So is it sort of go through the motions, let the race play out, or do you try to kind of map out sections of your race?
I want to be leading by turn 1, man. I'm going to jump the start.
Jump the
I'm
start,
going to do whatever
go
I
for
can.
it. Let's go.
You know, I think the biggest thing I've learned, and probably the same for you, is that you just got to be ready for change. You just got to be on your toes. You know, I think you can't really, you visualize, you know, things that you're doing and seeing the checker flag first and the stops going well and all that kind of jazz. But ultimately, you know, I think if you go in with too much of a set mindset, you know, of what you think's going to happen and it changes, you know, what's the point of that? So, you know, I think the biggest thing for me is not really, you know, committing to too much. You know, I think we just have to be ready for change. And I think that's the same for everybody. You know, I think at so many points during races, did you think you had a chance? Maybe not. You know, you were going to maybe finish top 10. And then, you know, the C's part and the strategy you're on was going to work. You know, last year I think we were on the perfect strategy, and then, you know, we had that one caution and it kind of reset things, and we just didn't have the speed. So, yeah, just let it play out, man.
You've had this long storied career, you know, accomplished so much, and you've done it essentially all with one team.
Yeah, yeah.
I know throughout the years you've maybe had conversations with other teams, maybe even came close to going somewhere else. I don't know, but with, you know, there's no end in sight for Scott Dixon. No one can see that. You know, people started asking you that question a few years ago, and then they just stopped asking because you still win races, you still compete for championships and 500, so there's no point even discussing it. Do you see any point in your future maybe trying an IndyCar season with a different team, or do you see your career ending with Chip Ganassi?
I don't know. That's probably an answer for Chip. I don't know. You know, sometimes you're forced out of what you would like to do, but you know, I've been part of this team now as the 24th season. You know, it's like family, man. You know, I've spent more time with a lot of these, you know, boys and girls than I have with my own family. So, you know, for me, you know, there's still a lot to accomplish. You know, we've accomplished a lot, you know, in the past years. But no, you know, I think if you could pick and choose, you know, it would be to finish here. But, you know, nobody knows what, you know, next year is going to bring, or the year after, or what the scenarios are going to be. So, yeah, we'll see, man.
7th title or second 500?
Both.
Scott Dixon.